Cardiac Arrhythmias and Obesity Research Lab. I'm Kedar Aras, Assistant Professor in the Department of Physiology and Biophysics and an adjunct faculty in the Department of Biomedical Engineering at University at Buffalo. For this episode, I wanted to share my perspective on the different elements of a startup package. So by this point, if everything has gone well, your job talk, chalk talk, on-campus visit, if that has exceeded expectations, and the department and the university likes you, they'll start the negotiations for a startup package. They'll typically reach out to you in a week or 2 weeks and ask for a spreadsheet of what your expectations are in terms of the financial package. So what goes into that? A typical spreadsheet contains different elements of your startup. That includes your salary expectations, not only for you, but also personnel that you want to hire, postdoc, perhaps a lab technician, maybe graduate students. And if that is the case, how many years will they be funding your personnel, postdoc, lab technician, and graduate students? And does that include tuition and stipend and so on and so forth? So it's not only the amount, but also the duration of funding that needs to be accounted for. In addition to that, there are equipment costs, lab supplies, and equipments could include whatever major big pieces of equipment. Like in my instance, it was the optical imaging equipment, incubators, and the chemical hood, the BSL2 cabinets, and so on and so forth. Supplies obviously includes chemical reagents, animals, and any additional chemicals and general supplies that may be needed for your lab. And then there are miscellaneous travel, publications, so on and so forth. So that typically accounts for the basic elements of a startup spreadsheet. In addition to that, you also should be able to negotiate the space. And this is a tricky proposition because once a space is assigned, it's much harder to expand on that space. So it's better to have that negotiated upfront in terms of how many procedure rooms you need, how many lab benches they'll give you, how many student cubicles will be available to you, so on and so forth. So all of that goes into a spreadsheet that you need to be accounting for and listing in as much detail as possible. So to recap, a startup spreadsheet will include your financial requirements in terms of salary, equipment, lab supplies, personnel, and miscellaneous in terms of travel, publication costs. In addition to that, you also need to negotiate the lab space, including any procedure rooms you may need, as well as the duration of the startup funding. So oftentimes, they'll give you for your startup package for 3 years, but you can negotiate it for a longer duration of time. There's one more critical concept that is important when you're going through the negotiations. This is something I found out a little later on, which is the concept of soft money versus hard money. So when you list out this requirements of financial expectations, if it's hard money, the idea is they'll give you that money and then you can use it however you want to split it. You could use it for a couple of postdocs instead of a postdoc and a technician, or you could choose to use that money to hire multiple graduate students, or you could split that money for additional equipment, so on and so forth. So they don't dictate how you spend that money. They give you a lump sum, hard money, and you get to choose how you're going to spend that money. And that is the most optimal form of startup package, where you list what your requirements are and you get your startup financial package accordingly, but then they leave it to your discretion as to how you want to spend that money. Soft money, on the other hand, is where they'll give you the money to spend only in the area that you asked to spend it. In addition, there will be a time constraint where if you are unable to spend that money by that time period, they'll take it back. And that is slightly a tricky proposition. So if possible, see if you can negotiate your startup package to be hard money as opposed to soft money. In addition to that, the salary expectations might be something that would be important to negotiate. Not in terms of the amount per se, but where that money is going to be coming from. Is the money going to be coming from the grant? Is it the money going to be coming from the university? And how is that split going to be? Is your salary going to be covered for 9 months, 12 months? And how does that go? So there are all critical aspects of the salary negotiations, then the startup negotiations that you need to be aware of. You probably should lean on your mentor alliance, your postdoc mentor, your PhD mentor, and any other mentors you may have access to help you guide through the process. But to recap, your salary or the startup package will include financial expectations for your salary and the personnel salary as well. How much personnel they'll be willing to fund and support, including salary for postdocs, technicians, and graduate students. Second is equipment costs, lab supplies, travel, publication costs, and then finally negotiating your lab space, and then how long is the startup package going to last, will be available, and will that be hard or soft money? So once you have this package ready, negotiated, you can send it their way, and then they'll make a decision on how much they're willing to accommodate you. If they really like you and your expectations, or the startup expectations are within reason, whatever that means, then they'll go to the next step and make you an offer. But if the startup expectations is much more than they can afford, or they are unwilling, then perhaps it may not end up in an offer. So what makes for a good startup package? It really depends on the field you are in. If you do a lot of wet lab research, the startup package typically is more than if, say, you're in the computing field, where all you need is a computer to get started. But on a low end range, especially in my field, it can be anywhere from $500,000 to an average of $1 million. And if it's a high end, it can even reach up to $1.5 to $2 million. But again, you can ask for what you need, not for what you want. So your salary or your startup package should list what you need, not what you want. And if it's reasonable, whatever that amount may be, $500,000, $1 million, or $2 million, perhaps you need all that major equipment, and equipment costs are so high that may end up with high startup package requirements. So whatever that is, you need to be able to justify. It should not be a fanciful wish list, but a detailed list of stuff that you need to get your lab up and running successfully. So if you're able to do that and justify, and if they are willing to accommodate you, then you'll get to the next step, which is an offer letter. And what does that entail? We'll talk about it in the next episode. Until then, see ya.